Shemot Exodus Torah Portion Bo, translated Go, chapter 10 verse 1, through chapter 13 verse 16. First portion. Shemot Exodus chapter 10. 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Come to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, in order that I may place these signs of mine in his midst." The Lord said to Moses, "Come to Pharaoh, and warn him, that I may place," Hebrew, literally, my placing, that I may place. After the Targumim. 2. And in order that you tell into the ears of your son, and your son's son how I made a mockery of the Egyptians, and that you tell of my signs that I placed in them, and you will know that I am the Lord. I made a mockery, Hebrew, I mocked, like because you mocked me, Bamidbar, Numbers 22:29. Will it not be just as he mocked them, Ishmael, Samuel 6:6, stated in regard to Egypt. It is not an expression meaning a deed and acts, however, for were that so, he would have written, like and deal with them as you have dealt with me, Acre, Lamentations 1:22, which has been dealt to me, Acre, Lamentations 1:12. 3. So Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh and said to him, "So said the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, and they will worship me." To humble yourself, Hebrew, as the Targum Onkelos renders, and it is derived from, "You have refused to be humble and meek before me." 4. For if you refuse to let them go, behold, tomorrow I am going to bring locusts into your borders. 5. And they will obscure the view of the earth, and no one will be able to see the earth, and they will eat the surviving remnant, which remains for you from the hail, and they will eat all your trees that grow out of the field. The view of the earth, Hebrew, the view of the earth. And no one will be able, Hebrew literally, and will not be able. The seer will not be able to see the earth, but the text speaks briefly. 6. And your houses and the houses of all your servants and the houses of all the Egyptians will be filled, which your fathers and your fathers' fathers did not see since the day they were on the earth until this day. Therewith, he turned and left Pharaoh. 7. Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How long will this one be a stumbling block to us? Let the people go and they will worship their God. Don't you yet know that Egypt is lost? Don't you yet know, Hebrew, do you not know yet that Egypt is lost?" Roshi and Rashbam from Targumim. 8. Thereupon, Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go, worship the Lord your God." Who and who are going? Were brought back. They were brought back by a messenger, whom the Egyptians sent after them, and they returned them to Pharaoh. 9. Moses said, "With our youth and with our elders we will go, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our cattle we will go, for it is a festival of the Lord to us." 10. So Pharaoh said to them, "So may the Lord be with you, just as I will let you and your young children out. See that evil is before your faces." Just as I will let you out, and surely I will not let the flocks and the cattle out as you said. 11. Not so, let the men go now and worship the Lord, for that is what you request. And he chased them out from before Pharaoh. Not so, as you have said that you want to take the young children with you, but let the men go and worship the Lord. From Jonathan. For that is what you request, meaning that worship you have requested until now, telling me, "Let us offer and sacrifice to our God." Shemot, Exodus 5:8, and young children do not usually offer up sacrifices. From Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 13:5. And he chased them out. This is elliptical, for it does not specify who the chaser was. Second portion. Shemot, Exodus chapter 10. 12 The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch forth your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, and they will ascend over the land of Egypt, and they will eat all the vegetation of the earth, all that the hail has left over. For the locusts, for the plague of the locusts." 13 So Moses stretched forth his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord led an east wind in the land all that day and all the night. By the time it was morning, the east wind had borne the locusts. The east wind bore the locusts, because at the east wind came opposite it the locust swarm, for Egypt is southwest of Israel, as is explained elsewhere. Bamidbar, Numbers 34:3. 14 The locusts ascended over the entire land of Egypt, and they alighted within all the borders of Egypt, very severe. Before them, there was never such a locust plague, and after it, there will never be one like it. And after it, there will never be one like it. And the locust plague that took place in the days of Joel, about which it is said, the like of which has never been. Joel 2 verse 2, from which we learn that it was more severe than that of the plague in the days of Moses, namely, because that one was composed of many species of locusts that were together, Arbeh, Yelek, Chassel, and Gazam. But the locust plague of Moses consisted of only one species, the Arbeh, and its equal never was and never will be. 15 They obscured the view of all the earth, and the earth became darkened, and they ate all the vegetation of the earth and all the fruits of the trees, which the hail had left over, and no greenery was left in the trees or in the vegetation of the fields throughout the entire land of Egypt. No greenery, Hebrew, green leaf, verdure in French. 16 Pharaoh hastened to summon Moses and Aaron, and he said, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you." 17 But now, forgive now my sin only this time, and entreat the Lord your God, and let him remove from me just this death. 18 So Moses left Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. 19 And the Lord reversed a very strong west wind, and it picked up the locusts, and thrust them into the Red Sea. Not one locust remained within all the borders of Egypt. West wind, Hebrew, a west wind. From Targumim. Into the Red Sea. I believe that the Red Sea was partly in the west, opposite the entire southern boundary, and also east of the land of Israel. Therefore, a west wind thrust the locusts into the Red Sea, which was opposite it the west wind. Likewise, we find this written regarding the boundaries of Israel, that at the Red Sea faces the east of Israel, as it is said, "From the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines." Shemot, Exodus 23:31. This signifies from east to west, because the Sea of the Philistines was to the west, as it is said concerning the Philistines, the inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of Cherethites. Zephaniah 2:5. Roshi is apparently referring to the Gulf of Suez and the Gulf of Eilat, which are both branches of the Red Sea and thus are included in the expression Red Sea. The latter is the eastern boundary of the Holy Land, while the Gulf of Suez is Egypt's eastern boundary. Since the Philistines dwelt on the Mediterranean seacoast, the Red Sea mentioned in that context was surely the Gulf of Eilat. The Red Sea mentioned here is the Gulf of Suez, where the locusts were deposited. Not one locust remained, even the salted ones locusts, which they the Egyptians had salted for themselves to eat. From Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 13:7, Midrash Tanchuma, Va'era 14. 20 But the Lord strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel go out. 21 The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch forth your hand toward the heavens, and there will be darkness over the land of Egypt, and the darkness will become darker. And the darkness will become darker," Hebrew, signifies "and the darkness will become darker upon them than the darkness of night, and the darkness of night will become even darker." Will become darker, Hebrew, should be interpreted like. There are many words which lack the aleph, since the pronunciation of the aleph is not so noticeable, Scripture is not particular about its absence. Example, in and no Arab shall pitch his tent there. Yeshayahu Isaiah 13:20 is the same as, for you have girded me with strength. 2 Shmuel Samuel 22:40 is like Tehillim, Psalms, Songs of Praise 18:40. Onkelos, however, rendered it as an expression of removal, similar to, he did not move. Shemot, Exodus 13:22. Onkelos thus understands the verse to mean, after the darkness of night turns away, when it approaches the light of day. But according to Onkelos, the context does not fit with the vorf of, because it is written after, and there will be darkness, and the darkness will turn away, and there will be darkness. The Agadic Midrash Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 14:1-3 interprets it as an expression related to grope about at noontime. Devrim Deuteronomy 28:29, for it the darkness was doubled, redoubled, and thick to the degree that it was tangible. 22 So Moses stretched forth his hand toward the heavens, and there was thick darkness over the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. And there was thick darkness for 3 days, etc. Thick darkness in which they did not see each other for those 3 days, and another 3 days of darkness twice as dark as this, so that no one rose from his place. If he was sitting, he was unable to stand, and if he was standing, he was unable to sit. Now why did he bring darkness upon them, the Egyptians? Because there were among the Israelites, in that generation, wicked people, who did not want to leave Egypt. They died during the 3 days of darkness, so that the Egyptians would not see their downfall and say, they too are being smitten like us. Also, the Israelites searched the Egyptians' dwellings during the darkness, and saw their own belongings. When they were leaving Egypt and asked for some of their things, and they the Egyptians said, we have nothing, he the Israelite would say to him, I saw it in your house, and it is in such and such a place. From Jonathan, Tanchuma, Bo 3, Tanchuma, Vaera 14, Tanchuma Buba, Bo 3. 3 days, Hebrew, a triad of days, a group of 3 consecutive days, terzine in Old French, and similarly, everywhere means a cetane of days, a group of 7 consecutive days. 23 They did not see each other, and no one rose from his place for 3 days, but for all the children of Israel there was light in their dwellings. Third portion. Shemot, Exodus chapter 10. 24 Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, Go. Worship the Lord, but your flocks and your cattle shall be left. Your young children may also go with you. Shall be left, Hebrew, literally, shall be placed. Shall be left in its place. 25 But Moses said, You too shall give sacrifices and burnt offerings into our hands, and we will make them for the Lord our God. You too shall give, not only will our livestock go with us, but you too shall give of your livestock or something else to sacrifice. 26 And also our cattle will go with us, not a single hoof will remain, for we will take from it to worship the Lord our God, and we do not know how much we will worship the Lord until we arrive there. Hoof, Hebrew, the sole of a foot, plant in French. From Targum Yerushalmi, Rome MS, cited by the Pentateuch with Roshi Hashalom. Do not know how much we will worship how intense the worship will be. Perhaps he will ask for more than we have in our possession. From Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 18:1. 27 The Lord strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he was unwilling to let them out. 28 Pharaoh said to him, Go away from me. Beware. You shall no longer see my face, for on the day that you see my face, you shall die. 29 Thereupon, Moses said, You have spoken correctly, I shall no longer see your face. You have spoken correctly, you have spoken appropriately, and you have spoken at the right time. It is true that I shall no longer see your face. From Makilta on Shemot, Exodus, 12:31. Shemot Exodus chapter 11. 1. The Lord said to Moses, I will bring one more plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go from here. When he lets you out, he will completely drive you out of here. Completely, Hebrew onkelos renders, is therefore the equivalent of complete. I.e., he will let all of you out. 2. Please, speak into the ears of the people, and let them borrow, each man from his friend and each woman from her friend, silver vessels and golden vessels. Please, speak dash. Hebrew is only an expression of request. The verse is saying I ask you to warn them about this, i.e., to ask their neighbors for vessels so that the righteous man, Abraham, will not say he fulfilled with them his promise, and they will enslave them and oppress them. Bereshit Genesis 15:13. But he did not fulfill with them. Afterwards they will go forth with great possessions. Bereshit Genesis 15:14. From Beresho 9a. 3. So the Lord gave the people favor in the Egyptians' eyes. Also the man Moses was highly esteemed in the land of Egypt in the eyes of Pharaoh's servants, and in the eyes of the people. 4th portion. Shemot Exodus chapter 11. For Moses said, So said the Lord, at the dividing point of the night, I will go out into the midst of Egypt. Moses said, So said the Lord, when he stood before Pharaoh. This prophecy was said to him, for after Moses left his Pharaoh's presence, he did not see his face again. From Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 18:1, Mishnath Rabbi Eliezer chapter 19. At the dividing point of the night, Hebrew, when the night is divided, is like, when the meal offering was offered up, 2 Kings 3 verse 20, and like, when their anger was kindled against us, Tehillim, Psalms, Songs of Praise, 124:3. This is its simple meaning, which fits its context, that is not a noun denoting a half. Our rabbis, however, interpreted it like, at about midnight literally, half the night, and they said that Moses said, about midnight, meaning near at midnight, either before it or after it, but he did not say, at midnight, lest Pharaoh's astrologers err and then say, Moses is a liar, but the Holy One, blessed be he, who knows his times and his seconds, said, at midnight. From Beresho 3b. 5. And every firstborn in the land of Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the firstborn of the slave woman, who is behind the millstones, and every firstborn animal. To the firstborn of the captive. Why were the captives smitten? So that they would not say, Our deity has demanded vengeance for our degradation, and brought retribution upon Egypt. From Parsha Bo, on Shemot, Exodus 12:29. From the firstborn of Pharaoh, to the firstborn of the slave woman, all those inferior to the Pharaoh's firstborn and superior to the slave woman's firstborn were included. Why were the sons of the slave women smitten? Because they too were enslaving them, the Israelites, and were happy about their misfortune. From Pasikta Rabbathai, chapter 17. And every firstborn animal, because they the Egyptians worshipped it, and when the Holy One, blessed be he, punishes any nation, he punishes its deity. From Parsha Bo, on Shemot, Exodus 12:29. 6. And there will be a great cry throughout the entire land of Egypt, such as there never has been and such as there shall never be again. 7. But to all the children of Israel, not one dog will whet its tongue against either man or beast, in order that you shall know that the Lord will separate between the Egyptians and between Israel. Will separate, Hebrew, I say that is a term meaning sharp. Similarly his tongue towards any man of the Bnei Yisrael. Joshua 10 verse 21, he did not sharpen. Then you will utter a sharp sound. 60 is 2 Samuel 5 verse 24, or, a sharp thresher. Or, Isaiah 41 verse 14, are the thoughts of a sharp one. Proverbs 21 verse 5, a meaning, a sharp and clever person. Proverbs 10 verse 4, or, you bring wealth to the hand of the clever ones. Sharp merchants. will separate, Hebrew, will divide. From Onkelos, Jonathan. See the commentary on Shemot, Exodus 8:18. 8 And all these servants of yours will come down to me and prostrate themselves to me, saying, Go out, you and all the people who are at your feet, and afterwards I will go out. Then Moses exited from Pharaoh with burning anger. And all these servants of yours will come down. By using this phrase, Moses showed respect for the throne, because eventually Pharaoh himself went down to him at night and said, Get up and get out from among my people. Shemot, Exodus 12:31. Although Moses had not originally said, You will come down to me and prostrate yourself to me. From Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 7:3, Makilta, Bo 13. Who are at your feet, who follow your advice and your way. And afterwards I will go out, with all the people from your land. He exited from Pharaoh. After he had completed his words, he went out from before him with burning anger, because Pharaoh had said to him, You shall no longer see my face. Shemot, Exodus 10:28. 9 The Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not heed you, in order to increase my miracles in the land of Egypt. In order to increase my miracles in the land of Egypt. My miracles denotes 2, to increase denotes 3. They are the plague of the firstborn, the splitting of the Red Sea, and the stirring of the Egyptians into the sea. 10 Moses and Aaron had performed all these miracles before Pharaoh, but the Lord strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel out of his land. Moses and Aaron had performed, etc. It has already been written for us in reference to all the miracles, and its scripture did not repeat it here except to juxtapose it to the following section, i.e., Shemot, Exodus 12. See Rashi's commentary on the following verse. Shemot, Exodus chapter 12. 1 The Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, The Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron. Since Aaron had worked and toiled with miracles, just like Moses, he accorded him this honor at the first commandment by including him with Moses in his speech. From Tanchuma Buba, Bo 8, Makilta. In early editions of Rashi, this paragraph is part of the above paragraph, the comment on 11:10. Indeed, that is how it appears in Tanchuma Buba. In the land of Egypt, i.e., outside the city. Or perhaps it means only within the city. Therefore, Scripture states, When I leave the city, I will spread my hands to the Lord. Shemot, Exodus 9:29. Now, if even a prayer, which is of minor importance, Moses did not pray within the city, a divine communication, which is of major importance, how much more so would God not deliver it to Moses within the city? Indeed, why did he not speak with him within the city? Because it was full of idols. From Makilta. 2 This month shall be to you the head of the months. To you it shall be the first of the months of the year. This month, Hebrew, literally, this renewal. God showed him Moses the moon in its renewal and said to him, When the moon renews itself, you will have a new month. Makilta. Nevertheless, despite this rendering, a biblical verse does not lose its simple meaning. Shabbat 63a. Concerning the month of Nisan, he said to him, This shall be the first of the order of the number of the months. So Iyar shall be called the second month, and Sivan the third month. This, Moses found difficulty determining the precise moment of the renewal of the moon, in what size it should appear before it is fit for sanctification. So he showed him with his finger the moon in the sky and said to him, You must see a moon like this and sanctify the month. Now how did he show it to him? Did he not speak to him only by day, as it says, Now it came to pass on the day that the Lord spoke. Shemot, Exodus 6:28. On the day he commanded. Vayikra, Leviticus 7:38. From the day that the Lord commanded. And on Bamidbar. Numbers 15:23. Rather, just before sunset, this chapter was said to him, and he showed him the moon when it became dark. From Makilta. 3 Speak to the entire community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, let each one take a lamb for each parental home, a lamb for each household. Speak to the entire community, Hebrew, the plural form. Now did Aaron speak? Was it not already stated to Moses, "You shall speak Shemot," Exodus 7:2, and you speak to the children of Israel, saying Shemot, Exodus 31:13. But they, Moses and Aaron, would show respect to each other and say to each other, "Teach me what to say," and the speech would emanate from between them, and it would sound as if they both were speaking. From Makilta. To the entire community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of month speak today on Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, that they should take it the lamb on the 10th of the month. From Makilta. This, the Passover sacrifice of Egypt, had to be taken on the 10th, but not the Passover sacrifice of later generations. From Makilta, Parsha 96a. A lamb for each parental home, i.e., a lamb for one family. If the family members were numerous, I would think that one lamb would suffice for all of them. Therefore, the Torah says, a lamb for a household. From Makilta. 4. But if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his neighbor who is nearest to his house shall take one according to the number of people, each one according to one's ability to eat. Shall you be counted for the lamb? But if the household is too small for a lamb, and if they are too few to have one lamb, for they cannot eat it all, and it will become left over, see verse 10, then he and his neighbor shall take. This is the apparent meaning according to its simple interpretation. There is, however, also a midrashic interpretation, namely that this verse comes to teach us that after they were counted on it, i.e., after they registered for a certain lamb, they may diminish their number and withdraw from it and be counted on another lamb. If, however, they wish to withdraw and diminish their number, they must do it literally, from the being of the lamb. They must diminish their number while the lamb still exists, while it is still alive, and not after it has been slaughtered. From Makilta, Parsha 98a. According to the number of, Hebrew, amount, and so the amount of your valuation, Vayikra, Leviticus 27:23. According to one's ability to eat. This indicates that only one who is fit to eat, which excludes the sick and aged who cannot eat an olive-sized portion, can be counted among the group for whom the sacrifice is killed. From Makilta. Shall you be counted? Hebrew Onkelos renders, you shall be counted. 5. You shall have a perfect male lamb in its first year. You may take it either from the sheep or from the goats. Perfect, without a blemish. From Makilta. In its first year, Hebrew, for its entire first year it is called, meaning that it was born during this year. From Makilta. Either from the sheep or from the goats, either from this species or from that species, for a goat is also called, as it is written, an akid devrim, Deuteronomy 14:4. From Makilta. 6. And you shall keep it for inspection until the 14th day of this month, and the entire congregation of the community of Israel shall slaughter it in the afternoon. Zechariah 9:11. Moreover, they the Israelites were passionately fond of idolatry. Moses said to them, Withdraw. And you shall keep it for inspection, Hebrew. This is an expression of inspection, that the animal requires an inspection for a blemish 4 days before its slaughter. Now why was it the designated animal to be taken 4 days before its slaughter, something not required in the Passover sacrifice of later generations? Rabbi Mathia the son of Chaash used to say in response, Behold, God says, and I passed by you and saw you, and behold, your time was the time of love, Ezekiel 16:8. The time for the fulfillment of the oath that I swore to Abraham, that I would redeem his children, has arrived. But they the children of Israel had no commandments in their hands with which to occupy themselves in order that they be redeemed, as it is said, but you were naked and bare. Ezekiel 16:7. So he gave them 2 mitzvot, the blood of the Passover and the blood of the circumcision. They circumcised themselves on that night, as it is said, downtrodden with your blood. Ibid, verse 6, with the 2 types of blood. God states also, you, too, with the blood of your covenant, I have freed your prisoners from a pit in which there was no water. Zechariah 9:11. Moreover, they the Israelites were passionately fond of idolatry. Moses said to them, withdraw and take for yourselves Shemot, Exodus 12:21. He meant, withdraw from idolatry and take for yourselves sheep for the mitzvah. From Mechilta, here and on verse 21. Note that on verse 21, Rashi explains that differently. Shall slaughter it. Now do they all slaughter it? Rather, from here we can deduce that a person's agent is like himself. From Mechilta, Kiddushin 41b. Therefore, it is considered as if all the Israelites slaughtered the sacrifice. The entire congregation of the community of Israel. This means the congregation, the community, and Israel. From here, they the rabbis said, the communal Passover sacrifices are slaughtered in 3 distinct groups, one after the other. Once the first group entered, the doors of the temple court were locked until the group finished. They were followed by the second group, etc., as is stated in Pesachim 64b. In the afternoon, Hebrew from 6 hours after sunrise and onward is called, literally, between the 2 evenings, for the sun is inclined toward the place where it sets to become darkened. It seems to me that the expression denotes those hours between the darkening of the day and the darkening of the night. The darkening of the day is at the beginning of the 7th hour, when the shadows of evening decline, and the darkening of the night, at the beginning of the night, is an expression of evening and darkness. Like all joy is darkened. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 2400 hours 11. From Mechilta 7. And they shall take some of the blood, and put it on the 2 doorposts, and on the lintel, on the houses in which they will eat it. And they shall take some of the blood. This is the receiving of the blood from the animal's neck immediately after the slaughtering. I would think that it was to be received in the hand. Therefore, Scripture says, that is in the basin below, verse 22, specifying that the blood is to be received in a vessel. From Mechilta. The doorposts, they are the upright posts, one from this side of the entrance and one from that side. From Kiddushin 22b. The lintel, Hebrew. That is the upper beam, against which the door strikes when it is being closed, lintel in Old French. The term means striking, like in the phrase, the sound of a rattling leaf, Vayikra, Leviticus 26:36, which Onkelos renders, bruise, Shemot, Exodus 21:25, which Onkelos renders, based on Jonathan. On the houses in which they will eat it, but not on the lintel and the doorposts of a house used for storing straw, or a house used for cattle, in which nobody lives. Based on Mechilta. 8. And on this night, they shall eat the flesh, roasted over the fire, and unleavened cakes, with bitter herbs they shall eat it. The flesh, but not sinews or bones. From Mechilta. And unleavened cakes, with bitter herbs. Every bitter herb is called, and he commanded them to eat bitters in commemoration of, and they embittered their lives. Shemot, Exodus 1:14. From Parsha 39a, 1:16b. 9. You shall not eat it rare or boiled in water, except roasted over the fire, its head with its legs and with its innards. You shall not eat it rare, Hebrew something not roasted sufficiently is called in Arabic or boiled. All this is included in the prohibition of you shall not eat it. From Parsha 41b. In water, how do we know that it is also prohibited to cook it in other liquids? Therefore, Scripture states, meaning boiled in any manner. From Parsha 41a. Except roasted over the fire, above verse 8, he decreed upon it the animal sacrifice, with a positive commandment, and here he added to it a negative commandment, you shall not eat it except roasted over the fire. From Parsha 41b. Its head with its legs, one should roast it completely as one, with its head and with its legs and with its innards, and one must place its intestines inside it after they have been rinsed. Parsha 74a. The expression is similar to the expression, with their hosts, Shemot, Exodus 6:26, which is like, as they are. This too means they should roast the animal as it is, all its flesh complete. 10 And you shall not leave over any of it until morning, and whatever is left over of it until morning, you shall burn in fire. And whatever is left over of it until morning dash. What is the meaning of until morning a second time? This implies adding one morning to another morning, for morning starts with sunrise, and this verse is here to make it the prohibition earlier, i.e., that it is forbidden to eat it the leftover flesh from dawn. This is according to its apparent meaning. Another midrashic interpretation is that this teaches that it may not be burnt on Yom Tov, but on the next day, and this is how it is to be interpreted. And what is left over from it on the first morning you shall wait until the second morning and burn it. From Shabbat 24b. 11 And this is how you shall eat it, your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is a Passover sacrifice to the Lord. Your loins girded, ready for the way, i.e., for travel. From Makilta. In haste, Hebrew, a term denoting haste and speed, like and David was hastening, Shmuel, Samuel, 23:26, that the Arameans had cast off in their haste. 2 Kings 7 verse 15. From Onkelos. And upon all the gods of Egypt dash. The one made of wood will rot, and the one made of metal will melt and flow to the ground. Every firstborn in the land of Egypt, even other firstborn who are in Egypt, will die. Now how do we know that even the firstborn of the Egyptians, who are in other places, will die? Therefore, Scripture states, to him who smote the Egyptians with their firstborn, Tehillim, Psalms, Songs of Praise, 136:10. From Makilta. Both man and beast, i.e., first man and then beast. He who started to sin first, from him the retribution starts. From Makilta. And upon all the gods of Egypt dash. The one made of wood will rot, and the one made of metal will melt and flow to the ground. From Makilta. Will I wreak judgments, I the Lord? I by myself and not through a messenger. From Passover Haggadah. 13 And the blood will be for you for a sign upon the houses where you will be, and I will see the blood and skip over you, and there will be no plague to destroy you when I smite the people of the land of Egypt. And the blood will be for you for a sign, the blood will be for you a sign, but not a sign for others. From here, it is derived that they put the blood only on the inside. From Makilta 11. And I will see the blood, in fact, everything is revealed to him. Why then does the Torah mention that God will see the blood? Rather, the Holy One, blessed be He, said, I will focus my attention to see that you are engaged in my commandments, and I will skip over you. From Makilta. And skip over, Hebrew is rendered and I will have pity, and similar to it. Sparing and rescuing, Yeshayahu, Isaiah 31:5. I say, however, that every expression of is an expression of skipping and jumping. Hence, means that he was skipping from the houses of the Israelites to the houses of the Egyptians, for they were living one in the midst of the other. Similarly, skipping between two ideas, 1 Kings 18 verse 21. Similarly, the lame walk as if jumping. Similarly, means jumping over him and rescuing him from among the slain. From Makilta, both views are found in Makilta. The first view is also that of Onkelos. And there will be no plague to destroy you, but there will be a plague upon the Egyptians. Let us say that an Egyptian was in an Israelite's house. I would think that he would escape. Therefore, Scripture states, and there will be no plague upon you, but there will be a plague upon the Egyptians in your houses. Let us say that an Israelite was in an Egyptian's house. I would think that he would be smitten like him. Therefore, Scripture states, and there will be no plague upon you. From Makilta. 14. And this day shall be for you as a memorial, and you shall celebrate it as a festival for the Lord. Throughout your generations, you shall celebrate it as an everlasting statute. As a memorial, for generations. And you shall celebrate it. The day that is a memorial for you, you shall celebrate it. But we have not yet heard, which is the day of memorial. Therefore, Scripture states, remember this day, when you went out of Egypt, Shemot, Exodus 13:3. We learn that the day of the Exodus is the day of memorial. Now, on what day did they go out of Egypt? Therefore, Scripture states, on the day after the Passover, they went out, Bamidbar, Numbers 33:3. I must therefore say that the 15th of Nisan is the day of the festival, because the night of the 15th they ate the Passover sacrifice, and in the morning they went out. Throughout your generations. I understand this to mean the smallest number of generations, namely only 2. Therefore, Scripture states, you shall celebrate it as an everlasting statute. From Makilta. 15. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, but on the preceding day you shall clear away all leaven from your houses, for whoever eats leaven from the first day, until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. For 7 days, Hebrew, setain of days, i.e., a group of 7 days. See Rashi on Shemot, Exodus 10:22. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes but elsewhere it says, for 6 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, Devarim, Deuteronomy 16:8. This teaches us regarding the 7th day of Passover, that it is not obligatory to eat matzah, as long as one does not eat chametz. How do we know that the first 6 days are also optional concerning eating matzah? This is a principle in interpreting the Torah. Anything that was included in a generalization in the Torah, and was excluded from that generalization in the Torah to teach something, it was not excluded to teach only about itself, but it was excluded to teach about the entire generalization. In this case it means that just as on the 7th day eating matzah is optional, so is it optional in the first 6 days. I might think that on the first night it is also optional. Therefore, Scripture states, in the evening, you shall eat unleavened cakes, Shemot, Exodus 12:18. The text established it as an obligation. From Makilta. But on the preceding day you shall clear away all leaven, Hebrew. On the day before the holiday, it is called the first day, because it is before the 7, i.e., it is not the first of the 7 days. Indeed, we find anything that is the preceding one is called, example, were you born before Adam? Job 15 verse 7. Or perhaps it means only the first of the 7 days of Passover. Therefore, Scripture states, You shall not slaughter with leaven the blood of my sacrifice. Shemot, Exodus 34:25. You shall not slaughter the Passover sacrifice, as long as the leaven still exists. From Mechilta, Parsha 5a. Since the Passover sacrifice may be slaughtered immediately after noon on the 14th day of Nisan, clearly the leaven must be removed before that time. Hence the expression must refer to the day preceding the festival. That soul, when he the person eats the leaven while he is with his soul and his knowledge, this excludes one who commits the sin under coercion. From Mechilta 43a. From Israel. I could understand that the soul will be cut off from Israel and will be able to go to another people. Therefore, to avoid this error, Scripture states elsewhere, from before me Vayikra, Leviticus 22:3, meaning, from every place which is my domain. From Mechilta 16. And on the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and on the seventh day you shall have a holy convocation. No work may be performed on them, but what is eaten by any soul that alone may be performed for you. A holy convocation, Hebrew, is a noun. Call it the day holy with regard to eating, drinking, and clothing. From Mechilta. No work may be performed on them, even through others. From Mechilta. That alone, i.e., the necessary work for food preparation. I would think that even for Gentiles it is allowed. Therefore, Scripture states, that alone may be performed for you but not for Gentiles. That the work needed for food, but not its preparations, that can be done on the eve of the festival, example, repairing a spit for roasting, or a stove for cooking. From Beitza 28b. By any soul, even for animals. I would think that even for Gentiles. Therefore, Scripture states, for you. From Beitza 21b, Mechilta another version, therefore, Scripture states, but, which makes a distinction. From Mechilta 17. And you shall watch over the unleavened cakes, for on this very day I have taken your legions out of the land of Egypt, and you shall observe this day throughout your generations, as an everlasting statute. And you shall watch over the unleavened cakes, that they should not become leavened. From here the rabbis derived that if the dough started to swell, she the woman rolling it out must moisten it with cold water. Rabbi Josiah says, do not read, the unleavened cakes, the commandments. Just as we may not permit the matzot to become leavened, so may we not permit the commandments to become leavened, i.e., to wait too long before we perform them, but if a commandment comes into your hand, perform it immediately. From Mechilta. And you shall observe this day, from performing work. Throughout your generations, as an everlasting statute, since generations, and an everlasting statute, were not stated regarding the prohibition of doing work, but only regarding the celebration sacrifice, the text repeats it here. So that you will not say that the warning of, no work may be performed, was not said for later generations, but only for that generation of the Exodus. 18 inches the first month, on the 14th day of the month in the evening, you shall eat unleavened cakes, until the 21st day of the month in the evening. Until the 21st day. Why was this stated? Was it not already stated, 7 days? Since it says days, how do we know nights are included in the mitzvah or commandment? Therefore, Scripture states, until the 21st day, etc. From Mechilta. 19 For 7 days, leavening shall not be found in your houses, for whoever eats leavening, that soul shall be cut off from the community of Israel, both among the strangers, and the native born of the land. Shall not be found in your houses. How do we know that the same ruling applies to leavening found within the borders outside the house? Therefore, Scripture states, throughout all of your borders, Shemot, Exodus 13:7. Why, then, did Scripture state, in your houses? To teach us that just as your house is in your domain, So the prohibition against possessing leaven in your borders means only what is in your domain. This excludes leaven belonging to a Gentile, which is in a Jew's possession, and for which he the Jew did not accept responsibility. From Makilta. For whoever eats leavening, this passage comes to punish with karath, premature death, by the hands of heaven for eating leavening. But did he not already give the punishment for eating leaven? But this verse is necessary so that you should not say that only for eating leaven, which is edible, did he punish, but for eating leavening, which is not edible, he would not punish. On the other hand, if he punished also for eating leavening and did not state that he punished for eating leaven, I would say that only for eating leavening, which causes others to become leaven, did he punish, but for eating leaven, which does not leaven others, he would not punish. Therefore, both of them had to be stated. From Makilta, Beitza 7b. Both among the strangers and the native born of the land. Since the miracle of the Exodus was performed for Israel, it was necessary to explicitly include the strangers, who were proselytized, but are not descended from Israelite stock. From Makilta 20. You shall not eat any leavening. Throughout all your dwellings you shall eat unleavened cakes. You shall not eat leavening. This is a warning against eating leavening. Any leavening. This comes to include its mixture, namely that one may not eat a mixture of chametz and other foods. From Makilta. Throughout all your dwellings you shall eat unleavened cakes. This comes to teach that the matzah must be fit to be eaten in all your dwelling places. This excludes the second tithe and the matzah loaves that accompany a thanksgiving offering, which are not fit to be eaten in all dwelling places, but only in Jerusalem. This insert may be Roshi's, or the work of an earlier printer or copyist, from Makilta. Fifth portion. Shemot, Exodus chapter 12. 21. Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, Draw forth, or buy for yourselves sheep for your families, and slaughter the Passover sacrifice. Draw forth, whoever has sheep shall draw from his own. Or buy, whoever has none shall buy from the market. From Makilta. For your families, a lamb for a parental house. From Makilta 3. 22. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and immerse it in the blood that is in the basin, and you shall extend to the lintel and to the two doorposts the blood that is in the basin, and you shall not go out, any man from the entrance of his house until morning. Hyssop, Hebrew. A species of herb that has thin stalks. A bunch of hyssop, 3 stalks are called a bunch. Sukkah 13a. That is in the basin, Hebrew, in the vessel, like silver pitchers, 2 Kings 12 verse 14. From Makilta. The blood that is in the basin. Why does the text repeat this? So that you should not say that Scripture means one immersion for all the 3 sprinklings. Therefore, it says again, that is in the basin, to indicate that every sprinkling shall be from the blood that is in the basin, for each touching and immersion is necessary. From Makilta. And you shall not go out, etc. This tells us that once the destroyer is given permission to destroy, he does not discriminate between righteous and wicked. And night is the time that destroyers are given permission, as it is said, in which every beast of the forest moves about. Tehillim, Psalms, Songs of Praise, 104:20. From Makilta. 23. The Lord will pass to smite the Egyptians, and he will see the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, and the Lord will pass over the entrance, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses to smite you. Will pass over, Hebrew, and he will have pity. This may also be rendered, and he will skip over. See Rashi on verses 11 and 13. And he will not permit the destroyer, Hebrew, literally, and will not give. I.e., he will not grant him the ability to enter, as in, but God did not permit him to harm me. Bereshit, Genesis 31:7. 24. And you shall keep this matter, as a statute for you and for your children forever. 25. And it shall come to pass, when you enter the land that the Lord will give you, as he spoke, that you shall observe this service. And it shall come to pass when you enter. Scripture makes this commandment contingent upon their entry into the land, but in the desert, they were obligated only to bring one Passover sacrifice, the one they performed in the second year, which they did by divine mandate. From Mechilta. As he spoke, now where did he speak? And I will bring you to the land, etc. Shemot, Exodus 6:8. From Mechilta. 26. And it will come to pass if your children say to you, what is this service to you? 27. You shall say, it is a Passover sacrifice to the Lord, for he passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, and he saved our houses. And the people kneeled and prostrated themselves. And the people kneeled and prostrated themselves, in thanksgiving for the tidings of the redemption, the entry into the land of Israel, and the tidings of the children that they would have. From Mechilta. 28. So the children of Israel went and did, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. So the children of Israel went and did, now did they already do it? Wasn't this said to them on Rosh Chodesh? But since they accepted upon themselves to do it, Scripture credits them for it as if they had already done it. From Mechilta. Went and did. Scripture counts also the going, to give reward for the going and reward for the deed. From Mechilta. As the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, this comes to tell Israel's praise, that they did not omit anything of all the commandments of Moses and Aaron. And what is the meaning of so they did? Moses and Aaron also did so. From Mechilta. 6th portion. Shemot, Exodus chapter 12. 29. It came to pass at midnight, and the Lord smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who is in the dungeon, and every firstborn animal. And the Lord, Hebrew, wherever it says, and the Lord, it means, he and his tribunal. Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 12:4, for the Vov, is an expression of addition, like so-and-so, and Vov so-and-so. Smote every firstborn, even a firstborn of another nation who was in Egypt. From Mechilta. So he called for Moses and Aaron at night. This tells us that Pharaoh went around to the entrances, i.e., to the doors of the houses of the city, and cried out, where is Moses staying? Where is Aaron staying? Smote every firstborn, even a firstborn of another nation who was in Egypt. From Mechilta. From the firstborn of Pharaoh, Pharaoh, too, was a firstborn, but he remained alive of the firstborn. Concerning him, God says, but for this reason I have allowed you to stand, in order to show you my strength. Shemot, Exodus 9:16 at the Red Sea. From Mechilta. To the firstborn of the captive, because they rejoiced at Israel's misfortune. Tanchuma 7, and furthermore, so that they would not say, our deity brought about this retribution. Mechilta. The firstborn of the slave woman was included, because Scripture counts from the most esteemed to the lowest, and the firstborn of the slave woman is more esteemed than the firstborn of the captive. See commentary on Exodus 11 verse 5. 30. And Pharaoh arose at night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great outcry in Egypt, for there was no house in which no one was dead. And Pharaoh arose from his bed at night, unlike the custom of kings, who rise 3 hours after daybreak. From Mechilta. He arose first, and afterwards his servants. This teaches us that he went around to his servants' houses and woke them up. From Mechilta. For there was no house in which no one was dead, if there was a firstborn, he was dead. If there was no firstborn, the oldest household member was called the firstborn, as it is said, I, too, shall make him David a firstborn. Tehillim, Psalms, Songs of Praise, 89:28 Tanchuma Buba 19. Rashi explains there, I shall make him great. Another explanation, some Egyptian women were unfaithful to their husbands and bore children from bachelors. Thus they would have many firstborn. Sometimes one woman would have 5, each one the firstborn of his father. Makilta 13:33. 31 So he called for Moses and Aaron at night, and he said, Get up and get out from among my people, both you, as well as the children of Israel, and go, worship the Lord as you have spoken. So he called for Moses and Aaron at night. This tells us that Pharaoh went around to the entrances, i.e., to the doors of the houses of the city, and cried out, Where is Moses staying? Where is Aaron staying? From Makilta. Both you, the men, as well as the children of Israel, the young children, and go, worship the Lord as you have spoken. Everything is as you said, not as I said. Neither will I let Israel out. Shemot, Exodus 5:2 is nullified. Who and who are going? Shemot, Exodus 10:8 is nullified. But your flocks and your cattle shall be left. Shemot, Exodus 10:24 is nullified. Instead, take also your flocks and also your cattle. What is the meaning of, as you have spoken? You too shall give into our hands sacrifices and burnt offerings. Shemot, Exodus 10:25. From Makilta. 32 Take also your flocks and also your cattle, as you have spoken, and go, but you shall also bless me. Take also your flocks and also your cattle. What does as you have spoken mean? You too should give us sacrifices and free will offerings. Take, as you have spoken, but you shall also bless me, i.e., pray for me that I shall not die, for I am a firstborn. From Onkelos. 33 So the Egyptians took hold of the people to hasten to send them out of the land, for they said, We are all dead. We are all dead, they said. This is not in accordance with Moses' decree, for he said, And every firstborn in the land of Egypt will die. Shemot, Exodus 11:5. But here, the ordinary people too are dead, 5 or 10 in one house. From Makilta. See Rashi on verse 30. 34 The people picked up their dough when it was not yet leavened, their leftovers bound in their garments on their shoulders. When it was not yet leavened, the Egyptians did not permit them to tarry long enough for it to leaven. Their leftovers, Hebrew. The remaining matzah and bitter herbs. From Makilta and Jonathan. On their shoulders, although they took many animals with them, they carried the remaining matzot and bitter herbs on their shoulders, because they loved the mitzvot. From Makilta. 35 And the children of Israel did according to Moses' order, and they borrowed from the Egyptians silver objects, golden objects, and garments. According to Moses' order, that he said to them in Egypt, and let them borrow, each man from his friend. Shemot, Exodus 11:2. From Makilta. And garments, these meant more to them than the silver and the gold, and thus whatever is mentioned later in the verse is more esteemed. From Makilta. 36 The Lord gave the people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and they lent them, and they emptied out Egypt. And they lent them, even what they the Israelites did not request, they the Egyptians gave them. You say, Lend me one. They responded, Take 2 and go. From Makilta. And they emptied out, Hebrew. Onkelos renders, and they emptied out. 37 The children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succos, about 600,000 on foot, the men, besides the young children. From Ramses to Succos, they were 120 mil apart. Yet they arrived there instantly, as it is said, and I carried you on eagle's wings. From Makilta. The men, from 20 years old and older. From Song Rabbah 3:6. 38 And also, a great mixed multitude went up with them, and flocks and cattle, very much livestock. A great mixed multitude, a mixture of nations of proselytes. From Zohar, Volume 2, p. 45b. 39 They baked the dough that they had taken out of Egypt as unleavened cakes, for it had not leavened, for they were driven out of Egypt, and they could not tarry, and also, they had not made provisions for themselves. Matzah cakes, cakes of matzah. Dough which did not leaven is called matzah. And also, they had not made provisions for themselves, for the trip. This verse tells of Israel's praise, namely that they did not say, "How will we go out into the desert without provisions?" Instead they believed and left. This is what is stated explicitly in the prophets. I remember to you the loving kindness of your youth, the love of your nuptials, your following me in the desert, in a land not sown. Jeremiah 2:2. Now what was the Israelites' reward? It is explained afterward, Israel is holy to the Lord, etc. Jeremiah 2:3. From Makilta. 40 And the habitation of the children of Israel, that they dwelled in Egypt, was 430 years. That they dwelled in Egypt, after the other dwellings in which they dwelled as foreigners in a land that was not theirs. From Makilta. Was 430 years, altogether, from the time that Isaac was born, until now, were 400 years. From the time that Abraham had seed, i.e., had a child, the prophecy, that your seed will be strangers, Bereshit, Genesis 15:13 was fulfilled, and there were another 30 years from the decree, between the parts, Gen 15:10. Until Isaac was born. It is impossible, however, to say that they spent 400 years in Egypt alone, because Kehath the grandfather of Moses was one of those who came with Jacob. Go and figure all his years, all the years of his son Amram, and Moses 80 years. You will not find them to be that many, and perforce, Kehath lived many of his years before he descended to Egypt, and many of Amram's years are included in the years of Kehath, and many of Moses' years are included in Amram's years. Hence, you will not find 400 years counting from their arrival in Egypt. You are compelled, perforce, to say that the other dwellings which the patriarchs settled were also called being sojournings, and even in Hebron, as it is said, where Abraham and Isaac sojourned. Bereshit, Genesis 35:27, and Scripture states also the land of their sojournings in which they sojourned, Shemot, Exodus 6:4. Therefore, you must say that the prophecy, your seed will be strangers, commences when Abraham had offspring. And only when you count 400 years from the time that Isaac was born, you will find 210 years from their entry into Egypt. This is one of the things that the sages changed for King Ptolemy. From Makilta, Meg. 9a. 41 It came to pass at the end of 430 years, and it came to pass in that very day, that all the legions of the Lord went out of the land of Egypt. It came to pass at the end of 430 years, and it came to pass in that very day. This tells us that as soon as the end of this period arrived, the Omnipresent did not keep them even as long as the blink of an eye. On the 15th of Nisan, the angels came to Abraham to bring him tidings. On the 15th of Nisan Isaac was born. On the 15th of Nisan the decree of between the parts was decreed. From Makilta. 42 It is a night of anticipation for the Lord, to take them out of the land of Egypt. This night is the Lord's, guarding all the children of Israel throughout their generations. It is a night of anticipation, for which the Holy One, blessed be He, was waiting and anticipating, in order to fulfill His promise to take them out of the land of Egypt. This night is the Lord's. This is the night concerning which He said to Abraham, on this night I will redeem your children. From Makilta. Guarding all the children of Israel throughout their generations, from that time onward, it the Israelites is guarded from harmful spirits, like the matter that is stated, and he will not permit the destroyer, etc., above verse 23. From Makilta. 43 The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, This is the statute of the Passover sacrifice. No estranged one may partake of it. This is the statute of the Passover sacrifice. On the 14th of Nisan, this section was told to them. From Shemot, Exodus, Rabbah 19:5. No estranged one, whose deeds have become estranged from his Father in heaven. Both a Gentile and an Israelite apostate are meant. From Makilta. 44 And every man's slave, purchased for his money you shall circumcise him, then he will be permitted to partake of it. You shall circumcise him, then he will be permitted to partake of it, i.e., he means his master. This tells us that the failure to perform the circumcision of one's slaves prevents one from partaking of the Passover sacrifice. These are the words of Rabbi Joshua. Rabbi Eliezer says, the failure to perform the circumcision of one's slaves does not prevent one from partaking of the Passover sacrifice. If so, what is the meaning of, then he will be permitted to partake of it? He in this phrase is referring to the slave. From Makilta. 45 A sojourner, or a hired hand may not partake of it. A sojourner, this is a resident alien. From Makilta i.e., a Gentile who has accepted upon himself not to practice idolatry, but eats carcasses. Or a hired hand, this is a Gentile. Now why is this verse stated? Aren't they uncircumcised? And it is stated, but no uncircumcised man may partake of it, verse 48. But this refers to a circumcised Arab, or a circumcised Gibeonite, who is a sojourner, or a hired hand. From Makilta. 46 It must be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the meat out of the house to the outside, neither shall you break any of its bones. It must be eaten in one house, in one group, that those counted upon it may not become two groups and divide it. You say that it means in one group, or perhaps it means nothing other than in one house as is its apparent meaning, and to teach that if they started eating in the yard and it rained, that they may not enter the house. Therefore, Scripture states, on the houses in which they will eat it above verse 7. From here we deduce that the one who eats the Passover sacrifice may eat it in two places. From Makilta. You shall not take any of the meat out of the house, i.e., out of the group. From Makilta. Neither shall you break any of its bones. If it the bone is edible, example, if there is an olive-sized amount of meat on it, it bears the prohibition of breaking a bone. If there is neither an olive-sized amount of meat on it nor marrow in it, it does not bear the prohibition against breaking a bone. From Parsha 84b. 47 The entire community of Israel shall make it. The entire community of Israel shall make it. Why was this stated? Because it says concerning the Passover sacrifice of Egypt, a lamb for each parental home above verse 3, we might think that the same applies to the Passover sacrifice of later generations. Therefore, Scripture states, the entire community of Israel shall make it. From Makilta. 48 And should a proselyte reside with you, he shall make a Passover sacrifice to the Lord. All his males shall be circumcised, and then he may approach to make it, and he will be like the native of the land, but no uncircumcised male may partake of it. He shall make a Passover sacrifice. We might think that everyone who converts must make a Passover sacrifice immediately. Therefore, Scripture states, and he will be like the native of the land, indicating that just as the native makes the sacrifice on the 14th of Nisan, so must a proselyte make it on the 14th of Nisan. From Makilta. But no uncircumcised male may partake of it, This includes one whose brothers died because of circumcision, one who is not considered an apostate in regards to circumcision, and his disqualification is not derived from no estranged one may partake of it. Verse 43. From Makilta 49. There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who resides in your midst. There shall be one law. This verse comes to liken a proselyte to a native also regarding other commandments in the Torah. From Makilta 50. All the children of Israel did, as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. 51. It came to pass on that very day, that the Lord took the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt with their legions. 7th portion. Shemot, Exodus chapter 13. 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, 2. Sanctify to me every firstborn, every one that opens the womb among the children of Israel, among man and among animals, it is mine. Every one that opens the womb, Hebrew, which opened the womb first, meaning to open as in the beginning of strife is like letting out water. Proverbs 17 verse 14. They will open their lips. Tehillim, a Psalms, songs of praise. 22:8. From Makilta, Targumim. It is mine, for myself, I have acquired them by smiting the firstborn of Egypt. From Makilta 3. Moses said to the people, remember this day, when you went out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for with a mighty hand, the Lord took you out of here, and therefore no leaven shall be eaten. Remember this day. This teaches us that we are to mention the Exodus from Egypt daily. From Makilta 4. Today you are going out, in the month of spring. In the month of spring. Now do we not know in what month they went out? Early editions read, now did they not know in what month they went out? Rather, this is what Moses said to them, see the loving kindness that he bestowed upon you, that he took you out in a month in which it is suitable to go out, when there is neither heat nor cold nor rain, and so it says, he takes the prisoners out at the most opportune time. Tehillim, a Psalms, songs of praise. 68:7, in the month when it is best suited to go out. From Makilta 5. And it will come to pass that the Lord will bring you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your forefathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, and you shall perform this service in this month. Into the land of the Canaanites, etc. Although Scripture enumerated here only 5 nations, it means all 7 of the nations, for they are all included in the term Canaanites, even though there was one of the families of Canaan that had only the name Canaanite. From Makilta, Tanchuma, Bo 12. Swore to your forefathers, etc. Concerning Abraham, it says, on that day, the Lord formed a covenant with Abram, saying, to your seed I have given this land. Bereshit, Genesis 15:18, and concerning Isaac it says, sojourn in this land, for to you and to your seed I will give all these lands, and I will set up the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. Bereshit, Genesis 26:3, concerning Jacob it says, the land upon which you are lying, to you I will give it and to your seed. Bereshit, Genesis 28:13. From Makilta. Flowing with milk and honey, milk flows from the goat's udders, and honey flows from the dates and the figures. From Kethuboth 1:11b. This service, that of the Passover sacrifice. Makilta, Parsha 96a, Makilta d Rabbi Shimon ben Yoki. Now was it not already stated above 12:25, and it shall come to pass, when you enter the land, that you should keep this service, etc. Now why did Scripture repeat it? Because of the thing that was newly introduced in it. In the former chapter 12:26, it says, and it will come to pass if your children say to you, what is this service to you? There, Scripture refers to a wicked son, who excludes himself from the community by saying to you, and here verse 8, and you shall tell your son, refers to a son who does not know to ask. Scripture teaches you that you yourself, should initiate the discourse for him Makilta 14 with words of the Agadah, which draw his interest literally, draw the heart. From Makilta 18:14. 6 For 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, and on the 7th day, there is a festival for the Lord. 7 unleavened cakes shall be eaten during the 7 days, and no leaven shall be seen of yours in your possession, and no leavening shall be seen of yours throughout all of your borders. 8 And you shall tell your son on that day, saying, Because of this, the Lord did this for me when I went out of Egypt. Because of this, in order that I fulfill his commandments, such as these commandments of the Passover sacrifice, matzah, and bitter herbs. From Jonathan, Passover Haggadah. The Lord did this for me. Scripture alluded to a reply to the wicked son, to say, The Lord did this for me, but not for you. Had you been there, you would not have been worthy of being redeemed. From Makilta 9 And it shall be to you as a sign upon your hand, and as a remembrance between your eyes, in order that the law of the Lord shall be in your mouth, for with a mighty hand the Lord took you out of Egypt. And it shall be to you as a sign, the exodus from Egypt shall be to you as a sign. From Jonathan upon your hand and as a remembrance between your eyes. This means that you shall write these passages verses 1:10 and 11:16, and bind them on the head and on the arm. Upon your hand, on the left hand. Therefore, in the second section, verse 16 is written with the full spelling, to explain thereby that it means the hand that is weaker, from Menachot 37b. 10 And you shall keep this statute at its appointed time, from year to year. From year to year, Hebrew, from year to year. From Onkelos 11 And it will come to pass, when the Lord will bring you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and to your forefathers, and he has given it to you. And it will come to pass when, will bring you. Some of our sages learned from here that the firstborn that were born in the desert were not sanctified. The one who rules that they were sanctified explains this entry as saying, If you fulfill it this commandment in the desert, you will merit to fulfill it there in the Holy Land. From Becheroth 4b. As he swore to you, now where did he swear to you? And I will bring you to the land, concerning which I raised, etc. Shemot, Exodus 6:8. From Makilta. And he has given it to you. It should seem to you as if he gave it to you today, and it should not seem to you as an inheritance from your forefathers. From Makilta 12 That you shall give over to the Lord whatever opens the womb, and every miscarriage that opens the womb of an animal which will be yours, the males belong to the Lord. That you shall give over, Hebrew is only an expression of separation, and so Scripture states, and you shall give over his inheritance to his daughter, Bamidbar, Numbers 27-8. From Makilta. And every miscarriage, Hebrew, an aborted fetus, which its mother ejected and sent out before its time. The text teaches you that it is holy in regards to freeing the one that follows it. A fetus that is not aborted is also called, like the offspring of your cattle, Devarim, Deuteronomy 7:13, but this verse came only to teach us about the aborted fetus, because Scripture already stated, whatever opens the womb. If you say that the firstborn of an unclean animal is meant, Scripture came and explained elsewhere, of your cattle, and of your flocks, Devarim, Deuteronomy 15:19. In another way we can explain, you shall give over to the Lord whatever opens the womb, that the text speaks of the firstborn of man. From Makilta 13 And every firstborn donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, and if you do not redeem it, you shall decapitate it, and every firstborn of man among your sons, you shall redeem. Firstborn donkey, but not the firstborn of other unclean animals. Makilta. This is a biblical edict decreed that the firstling donkey be redeemed, because the firstborn of the Egyptians were likened to donkeys. Moreover, because the donkeys assisted the Israelites in their departure from Egypt, for there was not a single Israelite who did not take donkeys from Egypt laden with the silver and gold of the Egyptians. From Becherot, Becherot, 5b. You shall redeem with a lamb, he must give the lamb to a Kohen. The firstborn donkey is permitted to be used, and the lamb is the ordinary property, i.e., unconsecrated of the Kohen. From Becherot, 9a, b, i.e., the lamb has no sanctity, and may be used by the Kohen. You shall decapitate it. He decapitates it with a cleaver from behind and kills it. Becherot, 13a. He caused the Kohen to lose his money by neglecting to give him the redemption lamb. Therefore, he must lose his own money by decapitating his donkey. From Becherot, 10b. And every firstborn of man among your sons, you shall redeem. His redemption price is established elsewhere. Bamidbar, Numbers, 18:16 as 5 sailors. 14 And it will come to pass if your son asks you in the future, saying, What is this? You shall say to him, With a mighty hand did the Lord take us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. If your son asks you in the future, Hebrew sometimes means now and sometimes means at a later time, such as it does here and such as in time to come. Your children might say to our children, Joshua 22:24, which refers to the children of Gad and the children of Reuben. From Makilta. What is this? This is the question of the simple child, referred to in the Haggadah, who does not know how to pose his question in depth, and asks a general question, What is this? Elsewhere its scripture says, What are the testimonies, the statutes, and the judgments, etc. Devarim, Deuteronomy, 6:20. This is the question of the wise son. The Torah spoke regarding 4 sons, the wicked one Shemot, Exodus, 12:26, the one who does not understand to ask Shemot, Exodus, 13:8, the one who asks a general question, and the one who asks in a wise manner. From Yerushalmi, Parsha 10:4. 15 And it came to pass, when Pharaoh was too stubborn to let us out, the Lord slew every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore, I slaughter for a sacrifice all males that open the womb, and every firstborn of my sons I will redeem. 16 And it shall be for a sign upon your hand and for ornaments between your eyes, for with a mighty hand did the Lord take us out of Egypt. And for ornaments between your eyes, Hebrew, tefillin. Since they are composed of 4 compartments, they are called, in Coptic meaning 2, and in Africi-Phrygian meaning 2 Menachot 34b. Thus 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 boxes of tefillin. Munakim Machbereth Munakim page 99, however, classified it with Speak to the South, Ezekiel 21:2, and Preach not, Micah 2 verse 6, an expression of speech, like and as a remembrance, Shemot, Exodus, 13:9, for whoever sees them the tefillin bound between the eyes will recall the miracle of the Exodus, and speak about it. Thank you to chabod.org for source material translation to compare. Visit mitzvahtorah.com for more clear text to audio ease of access presentations.